I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Diocletian set up this tetrarchy. It seems like a good plan. We're all set. Continue on with the Roman Empire. No. Diocletian, before he dies, he decides to retire. So rather than living out as Augustus until death, he wants to set an example by retiring and bringing in the Caesar to become the new Auguste. And he expects the same thing to happen in the West. He expects his Augustus in the West to retire, for his Caesar to become Auguste, and then therefore free up and keep this lineage of leadership continuing. But that doesn't happen. When Diocletian retires, outbreak of civil war, power struggle. One of the main components of this power struggle is there is a dispute of who should become Augustus and who should become Caesar. Now, Diocletian believed that the Caesar should become the new Augustus, Caesar to new Augustus, and they should then appoint new Caesars. This didn't work out in the West, where the Caesar was not appointed Augustus, and the man who was passed over for the role of Augustus in the West, he had a son. And both the man and his son thought that they could continue inheriting the role of Augustus, and the son would then would get the role of Caesar. And when this didn't happen, civil war broke out. The young man who expected to take on the role of Caesar after his father would become Augustus, which also didn't happen, was Constantine. Here is a portrait of Constantine, and we're going to look at this portrait in more detail later. But here is our map of the Tetrarchy. Constantine's dad was the Caesar of the northwest quadrant of the empire, stationed out of Trier. Constantine's dad expected to inherit the Augustan title and the southwestern quadrant. When he didn't get it, that meant that Constantine also didn't get to be the new young Caesar of the northwestern continent. He takes over the northwestern continent or quadrant of the empire as his own. And then he doesn't stop there. He forcibly takes the southwestern quadrant of the empire. And he doesn't stop there. He says, you know what? This whole tetrarchy, I hate it. Instead, it's all mine. He removes the tetrarchy. After a series of insanely, incredibly, miraculously won battles, Constantine has this kind of domino effect of taking control of that northwestern quadrant, the southwestern quadrant, and then the entire eastern half of the Roman Empire, thus removing the tetrarchy and establishing himself as the sole emperor of a singular empire yet again. I know. All these good intentions. One of the things that Constantine sets up in the city of Rome, which is, again, no longer the capital of the empire, but is the ceremonial capital or the navel of the empire, Constantine sets up our next work of art, the Arch of Constantine. So here we are looking at the Arch of Constantine. It's still in its original location in the city of Rome, and it's set up as, a arch proclaiming the triumphs of the Emperor Constantine. We've looked at an arch prior to this, right? We saw the Arch of Titus in the early imperial lecture. And I told you that an arch is simply a triumphal monument for emperors. And they're all over the place throughout the empire. So Constantine setting up this arch in the capital, or sorry, the naval, the ceremonial center of the empire, the birthplace of the empire, is his way of kind of staking his claim, of putting his mark on this extremely important historical site. And guess what? He put it right next to the Colosseum. It's straight up right next to the Colosseum. And again, that has a very clear intention. Everybody in the city of Rome is going to go to the Colosseum. And so everybody is going to see the Arch of Constantine. Now, similar to the Arch of Titus, there is a inscription at the top, and it's written on both sides. Here it is. So the inscription is celebrating Constantine's victory over the Roman Augustus, or I shouldn't say the Roman Augustus, the Augustus of the southwestern quadrant of the Tetrarchy. It reads, "To the Emperor Flavius Constantine the Great." Notice how he's adding the name Flavius here. So he's not from the Flavian family, but he's adding that Flavian, like Vespasian and Titus, he's adding it as a title, as part of his name. He's trying to pull in the lineage or the grandeur of the great Vespasian and the great Titus by adding Flavius to his name. So here, the Emperor Flavius Constantine the Great, pious and fortunate, the Senate and people of Rome, to the Emperor Flavius Constantine the Great, pious and fortunate, the Senate and people of Rome, because divine inspiration and his own greatness of spirit with his army on both the tyrant and all his faction at once in rightful battle, he avenged the state, dedicated this arch as a mark of triumph. It's a long one, but it's breaking down. It's saying that he is pious, he is the fortunate one, and that the Senate and the people have built this for Constantine to celebrate him freeing the people from the tyrant, the Augustus in the southwest quadrant. And that he was the, what does it say? The tyrant and his faction in a rightful battle, he avenged the state so that he is aligned with the protection of the empire. That's why he defeated the Augustus. That's why he wiped out the Tetrarchy. And thank you, Constantine. Now, when we look at the construction of this, it's interesting to note that many pieces are not original. What do I mean? Well, look at this diagram. Okay, so we have an arch, and yes, it has 3 arches. Don't think I didn't notice that. These types of 3 arches are also typical of triumphal arches. It's just that the Arch of Titus was a singular arch. Constantine's not the first to do it, and he's not the last to do it. But let's look at the arch, and in comparison to a diagram of the pieces that are used to build this arch. So the dark green are original, or not original, built for this arch. And then Constantine had pieces from other imperial artworks placed onto his arch, and they often would feature portraits of those emperors that the sculptors were then ordered to re-sculpt to look like Constantine. This type of borrowing from the previous emperors is symbolic, because look at the emperors he takes from: Trajan, Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius, Why are they familiar? Because they're 3 of the 5 good emperors at the height of the Roman Empire. So Constantine isn't just pulling from any emperor. He's going to pull from monuments of the greats: Hadrian, Trajan, Marcus Aurelius. The portions I want you to look at specifically are these figures here. These ones here. You know why? Because those are Dacians. Those are Dacians that were taken from the Forum of Trajan just down the street. Okay, so why is Constantine doing this? Now, an immediate kind of reaction would be, oh, well, he's, a ruthless, horrific vandalizer of the Roman Empire. No, because he's trying to set himself up as the next greatest thing of the Roman Empire. So he's taking from those great emperors, not in disrespect or to take away their power, but to absorb their power. These roundels here are from monuments to Hadrian, and they have images of Hadrian in them that have been reshapen to look like Constantine. He wants to absorb their power and then project that same height of the empire to the people. Oftentimes, people misunderstand this as being reflective of a lack of craftsmanship or resources, that Constantine was pulling scraps, like he was recycling out of necessity. No, that is not the case. This is still a massive and extremely powerful empire. He's not doing it because he can't find any people to do this craftsmanship or can't find any stonework. The symbolic absorption of those great emperors is what is happening here. And of course, he's no fool. He's going to take from the best. Let's look at our next Constantine artwork.